Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Nina. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is asking her committee chairs to move forward with articles of impeachment against President Trump. Pelosi's announcement is a formal indication of what many suspected, that the House will move forward with impeaching the president. Democrats had previously insisted that they had not made up their minds on whether articles of impeachment were coming. Well, during her announcement this morning, Speaker Pelosi blamed the president for bringing impeachment on himself.
I'm really sorry the president made this necessary by his complete disregard for the vision of our founders, for what he is doing. Article 2 says I can do whatever I want. It was completely contrary to what our founders had in mind. So all along I said for 2 years, this is an impeachment is not a pleasant experience. It can be divisive. We don't take any glee in this at all. It's heartbreaking. But the president gave us no choice. So we're not going to say, well, we would honor our oath of office, but what? He's the one who's dividing the country on this. We are honoring the Constitution of the United States.
Well, after the announcement, President Trump appeared to tell House Democrats, bring it on. On Twitter, he praised Republicans for being united in yesterday's hearing and wrote, quote, if you're going to impeach me, do it now, fast, so we can have a fair trial in the Senate and so that our country can get back to business. At the White House, the president also dismissed concerns that impeachment could stain his legacy. We also learned today that House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler is scheduling another impeachment hearing for next Monday. Stephen Castor and Daniel Goldman will testify in that hearing. They're the minority and majority counsels for the House Intelligence Committee who questioned witnesses during the hearings last month. The two lawyers will present their party's findings from the Ukraine investigation to the Judiciary Committee. Major Garrett, Jill Colvin, and Jennifer Haberkorn will join me now. Major is a CBS News chief Washington correspondent. Jill covers the White House for the Associated Press, and Jennifer covers Congress for the LA Times. Jennifer, I want to start off with you. Pelosi was asked about concerns that House Democrats were just moving too quickly through this impeachment process. What did she have to say about that today?
Yeah, this has been a big concern that several Democrats have brought up in recent days, particularly as the pace of this impeachment has picked up. But she said no, that this is not too fast. In fact, she said that this has been a 2.5-year process, a point that Republicans actually have made to criticize Democrats. But Pelosi's point is that they've been through all this. The facts are pretty much not in dispute, at least the very preliminary facts. And so she feels like they're confident moving forward as soon as 2 weeks from now.
So Major Pelosi also appeared to leave open the possibility there could be multiple committees at play here for the role in the articles of impeachment. What are really the implications of this? How will things work? How have they worked in past impeachments?
Well, let's go with past impeachments real quick, just to give the audience a sense of how this is so completely different. In Nixon's case, these are the modern impeachments, not Andrew Johnson, but the modern impeachments. In Nixon's case, there was a special prosecutor appointed by the Nixon Justice Department. Because Nixon thought he could control that investigation, that ultimately became one of the components of his undoing, his effort to create a cover-up using his own Justice Department. In the Bill Clinton case, it was an independent counsel. That was a law passed by Congress to create independent investigators outside the executive branch and authorized by Congress. Ken Starr originally took on this case as a land deal, Whitewater, that morphed into Paula Jones, which morphed into Monica Lewinsky, which led to an impeachment over perjury and witness tampering. Those are the two modern-day impeachment precedents. This is completely different. Why? Because of this great fundamental difference. The investigating body is the House Democratic majority under the auspices of the Intelligence Committee and other committees, but principally the Intelligence Committee. Why does that make such a big difference? Because there is no special prosecutor, there is no independent counsel. There is a partisan information gathering body led by Democrats. Now, Republicans say that makes it, on its face, illegitimate. It doesn't necessarily by the Constitution, because the Constitution does give the House majority the power to conduct an impeachment inquiry, and if evidence is gathered, create articles of impeachment. But to your main question, Rena, what are the implications of an impeachment or set of impeachment articles that involve more than just the Intelligence Committee and the Ukraine matter? Well, that could reach back to the Mueller investigation. It could deal with things in dealing with the president's accusations of using his role as president to enrich his own business enterprise, emoluments clause implications. All of that would make a larger case against the president, a larger body of accusations. If, in fact, the House wants to go down that road, each and every one of those articles would have to be voted on. But before that, explained in full context, not just to the members at large, but the country at large. So the House Democrats have a very important strategic, constitutional, and political question to ask themselves. How broadly do you want to make this set of impeachable offenses? Do you want them narrow, focused entirely on Ukraine, which is what the country has seen for the better part of the last 3 weeks? Or do you want to broaden that aperture and sort of take the totality of things you find either offensive, impeachable, or flat wrong conducted by this president? That is a very important decision yet to be made. When it's made, we'll know, because the House Judiciary Committee will eventually have to decide what goes in and what is excluded from articles of impeachment.
So, Major, you've sort of set the stage here of what we can expect with the process. But, you know, during these impeachment hearings, Republicans have argued that Democrats just hate the president. As Pelosi was leaving her press conference today, a reporter actually asked the speaker if she hates the president. Here's how she played this one.
I think the president is a coward when it comes to helping our kids who are afraid of gun violence. I think he is cruel when he doesn't deal with helping our dreamers, of which we're very proud. I think he's in denial about the climate crisis. However, that's about the election. This is about the elect. Take it up in the election. This is about the Constitution of the United States and the facts that lead to the president's violation of his oath of office. And as a Catholic, I resent your using the word hate in a sentence that addresses me. I don't hate anyone. I was raised in a way that is a heart full of love, and always prayed for the president. And I still pray for the president. I pray for the president all the time. So don't mess with me when it comes to words like that.
Major, it struck a nerve, to say the least, here. Why was she so adamant about making the point that this impeachment is not a personal vendetta?
Because that is a part of the Republican effort to dismantle the very legitimacy of this process. Republicans, as Jill mentioned a moment ago, said over and over that Democrats have been on this impeachment trail for the better part of 2 years since they took the House majority. Some House Democrats thought President Trump should have been impeached before they obtained the House majority. And the Speaker has some rhetoric of her own that she has to defend in this context, calling, for example, President Trump an imposter, having the head of the Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, describe him as a charlatan. Republicans point to that and say, you don't even acknowledge the core legitimacy through the Electoral College of the 2016 election. And because you fundamentally refuse to acknowledge that legitimacy, the legitimacy of your impeachment quest, Republicans argue, is also up for scrutiny, and they would say it's not legitimate. So Pelosi, the Speaker Pelosi, has rhetoric of her own and rhetoric of some of her own caucus members to defend in this context. And some of her own rhetoric does not acquit herself well when she's asked, do you have some personal animosity toward the president? Calling him an imposter, fair-minded people might think to themselves, well, that sounds like you have something personally against the president.
Jill, you know, the White House says they're preparing for an aggressive Senate trial, assuming the House votes to impeach. What would that look like? And why is the White House so confident? And they're pretty much saying, bring it. We're preparing.
Yeah, exactly. What we heard today, not just from the president's Twitter feed, but also from the White House press secretary, as well as from the president's re-election campaign, was this public acknowledgement of what we've all assumed for so long, that this is going to happen. And the White House at this point realizes, look, this is sort of a lost cause. We've done all we can to push back on impeachment in the House. There is going to be a vote that's going to take place on articles of impeachment. That's a done deal. So where can we try to push forward? Where do we have the opportunity to try to argue our case? And they've identified a Senate trial as the opportunity to do this. They say, look, it's much more favorable ground there. It's obviously a Republican majority. And the way the president is describing this is sort of like this made-for-TV, court TV spectacle, where he says he wants to have Pelosi testify. He wants to have Hunter Biden and Joe Biden testify. He wants Adam Schiff up there on the witness stand. And they're really trying to hype this now as an opportunity for the president to try to push back. That said, there are considerable risks, of course, in any impeachment hearing. There's still questions about how long the White House would like to see that hearing last. There are lots of questions about, well, what happens if Republican members, for instance, vote with Democrats to have certain witnesses testify, for instance, someone like John Bolton, other folks who didn't testify during the House hearings. It opens this whole can of worms for potentially embarrassing or incriminating information to come out. But what you've seen today is just an acknowledgement by the White House that basically this round is over and they're looking forward to the next opportunity.
So, Jennifer, when we look ahead, what can we expect from Monday's hearing, which will feature counsel from both Republican and Democratic parties?
Both sides are going to be making their case. We're going to see the counsel present the case to the lawmakers, but really the audience is the public on television. Obviously, there were a lot of hearings. We had a lot of testimony over the last month, but this is their opportunity to narrow it down to one comprehensive argument, and we're going to see that from both the Republicans and the Democrats. And this is going to be the first hearing in which Pelosi has already made the comment that articles of impeachment are going to come to the House floor and there's going to be a vote. We already saw that the last judiciary hearing was a little more tense than the ones in the Intelligence Committee. And I think that's only going to continue as the next 2 weeks roll out. We're going to see the tension increase even further as the vote comes into vision.
And Jill, House Judiciary Chair Jerry Nadler has set a deadline for this Friday for the White House to decide if they're going to participate or not in these upcoming hearings. What are you hearing from the White House? Are they going to take part in this?
Well, the White House has made very clear that they have not at least broadcast a decision yet, probably expecting that at some point tomorrow. And of course, in this White House, you always have to caution that, minds can be changed. The president can decide at the last minute that he wants to move in a different direction. But it seems like all indications today from the president's tweet, from Stephanie Grisham's statement, everything we've heard is that they are not really interested in participating in the House judiciary process. They've been very clear in letters that have been sent from the White House counsel's office in other responses to various efforts to have witnesses appear and to issue subpoenas, that they see this process as a sham. They claim that they don't believe that they could get any kind of fair shake given the members and the leadership of these committees, and therefore they're just not interested in participating. But we'll have to see ultimately what the letter says.
Jennifer, on the issue of subpoenas, Nadler set a deadline also for the ranking member, Republican member on the Judiciary Committee, Doug Collins, to submit his list of requested subpoenas. Do we have a sense of who Collins might request? Will Nadler allow these names to go through?
I think it's almost certain that Nadler's not going to allow it, but Collins most likely is going to choose the Republican witnesses that the Intelligence Committee wanted to see. If you'll remember, Hunter Biden made the list. Several other people associated with some of the conspiracies that Republicans have put forward around the 2016 election. But Nadler at this point seems very focused on moving this forward pretty quickly, and it's hard to see those witnesses getting a lot of airtime. That said, Nadler does have to allow a minority hearing at some point, and the question is whether that happens before a vote or after a vote. He's not limited in having it at any certain time.
Major, I want to ask you about this reporting from the Washington Post that Attorney General William Barr, his hand-picked prosecutor, told the Justice Department's Inspector General he just can't support the theory held by many Republicans that the investigation into Trump's campaign was actually set up by U.S. intelligence agencies. Does that somehow blunt what we've been hearing from certain Republicans at this point on this issue?
Well, it might, but it won't be the final word. William Barr has already indicated that, as Attorney General, and President Trump has hinted at it, that the Durham report is much more important than the Horowitz report, which will come out next week. Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General for the Justice Department. But this is an important component part of this long, roiling debate, at least within Republican circles, about the origins of the Russia investigation. Some Republicans have come to believe, aided and abetted by those in the conservative media, for sure, who have suggested, without a lot of foundational evidence, that the entire origin of the Russia investigation into the Trump campaign was a setup job, was an attempt to spy on a presidential campaign here in America. That's never been seen before. It's illegitimate. It's one of the greatest crimes ever. That's all sort of Twitter rhetoric from President Trump. And yet, the president's own and his attorney general's own hand-picked investigator, whom I have talked to people on the right and left about, all of whom say the same thing. Durham is a by-the-book, fact-based, and excellent investigator, can't find anything amiss in the origins of the investigation. However, the Horowitz report is quite likely, based on information we've gathered here at CBS, and I've talked to a lot of lawyers who are around this investigation, will probably draw some fault lines of behavior within the Justice Department about the continuation of that Russia investigation in some particular respects that did not conform, at minimum, with FBI and Justice Department protocol and may have crossed some legal lines. So the president and his Republican defenders will probably latch on to that as some justification of this long-running narrative. But to the accusation that the essence of the beginning of this counterintelligence investigation into the Trump campaign and involvement with those either representing or acting on behalf of Russia was not illegitimate, was not a crime, and was done by the books.
Major Garrett, Jill Colvin, and Jennifer Haberkorn, I want to thank all three of you for joining us.